Hello, you're watching World Talks on TVP World. My name is Sasha Farbach. U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance stated on Tuesday that a delayed U.S. deployment to Poland could ultimately be sent to another European country, even as Poland's defense minister publicly said that no reduction in U.S. forces has been agreed after his meeting with U.S. Defense Chief Pete Hegseth in Washington. That gap between reassurance and repositioning is now raising sharper questions about how stable NATO's eastern flank really is in practice. And joining us now is Zbigniew Lewicki, professor, American Studies expert. Good to have you back with us. Good morning.
Hello.
So, Professor, we spoke a couple days ago. Let's check the pulse of things as they are now. What do you make of this? And we're getting assurances, but also not quite. How do you interpret the latest round of messaging, shuttle diplomacy, and the statements we've heard from authorities in Washington and also in Warsaw?
I have a very uneasy feeling about this and about other aspects of Polish-American relations, that we don't know the real story. We get bits and of information, disinformation, denials, confirmations, etc., etc. But I don't really know, even though I try to follow it as closely as possible, what is the intent of the USA regarding presence of American troops in Europe, not in Poland, but in Europe in general. And unless this is decided or cleared, there is very little to gain by trying to interpret various misstatements coming from Warsaw, from Washington, about what the story is and why and who knew what when. This is much too confusing to be serious about.
Well, but if I may, we are serious about it. You're saying about deployments in Europe. But one thing that I think has people just concerned is, on the one hand, we had 5,000 troops that are being removed from Germany. Now, that was seen also as a surprise. But, you know, in one way, that was also a difference of policy. But Poland has been a model ally. Has, you know, one of the top NATO spenders, have been very close to the United States in many ways. We talked about this proximity of that relationship and having this ambiguity and not confirmed of actually having troops stay or increased. That's the question here. So how safe is that reassurance from the United States? How is that relationship? How is that Polish-American relationship moving forward? Because I think it has many people worried at this point.
I'm not quite sure about the importance of troops being stationed in Poland or anywhere else. This is at different times than it was, I don't know, 20 or 50 years ago. What's important is the fact that Americans are constructing various warehouses, that they are bringing weaponry to Poland, which would be used if need be. Transporting troops is the easiest part. And I think what's important is the fact that Americans are not withdrawing in terms of their technical capability of joining the war, if there is one, between Poland and Russia. And the very presence of boots on the ground, as they say, is, I think, of secondary importance. And I'm not quite sure why so much attention is being given to what is not so crucial to Americans' involvement in Europe.
But, I mean, looking at, as you said, certain types of investments and structure, weapons that are American systems, but nevertheless, having American troops on the ground, seen as a kind of a tripwire, if anything does happen, that's considerable. I mean, if we look at the example of South Korea, I mean, U.S. troops have been there in large quantity for decades, and some could argue that that has been also a guarantee of peace there. So I'm just curious as to why you'd say that troops don't matter in that sense. Can you just explain that a bit further?
I can't say it don't matter, but it doesn't matter so much, in other words. South Korea is a different story. You may also look at Israel, which of course is a very close ally of the United States, without presence of American troops. in Israel. So it all depends on the capability of the potential enemy. It's different in South Korea, where North Korea is 50 kilometers away from the capital, if I remember correctly. And it's different in Poland, because if Russia decides to attack a NATO country such as Poland, it will take quite a long time to get Russian troops ready. They are not stationed on the border. They would have to move their troops, I don't know, through Belarus or through Königsberg. This is not the same. And I think the willingness of the United States to participate in a hopefully never happening war is much more important than the tripwire effect. I know that we talked about tripwire in the 1990s, where we wanted to have, I don't know, one company or even one platoon of American soldiers as tripwire. I think we moved much beyond that, and I'm not worried about increased or decreased size of American troops in Poland, as long as Washington doesn't say we don't care about the possible war between Russia and NATO. And no such statement has ever been made or anything close to it.
I just want to get your opinion as well. We've had different, let's say, statements in the last sort of 24 hours. One in particular by the Vice President of the United States, J.D. Vance. I just want to read it out quickly to you and get your sense of what it means. So I'm quoting here, "There's no president who's done more to ensure that Ukraine survived the invasion of Russia than Trump. Poland is capable of defending itself. That's encouraging Europe to take more ownership." So again, here, I'm curious your interpretation of this, and why then the logic of removing troops or rotating them out or reassigning them elsewhere across Europe. Please tell us a bit more on your view there.
Well, please remember that stationing troops in Europe is not really essential to American national security. And we have to remember that, of course, Washington's actions are motivated, first of all, by Washington's interest regarding the United States. America first is a legitimate statement, such as Polish leaders should say Poland first, and that's it. If American military believe that they don't have to be on the ground to be a reasonable deterrent to any Russian offensive ideas, I'm not worried. I think we get ourselves, very excited about what is not essential. If Washington would have said, we are withdrawing from Europe altogether, taking away our toys and everything, now that would have been a different story. But that's not what happened. That's not what American intention is. They are realigning their forces. Remember, they have Ukraine to help. They have Iran to fight against. They have Mexico on their border with all the illegal migrants, etc. And of course, their resources are not unlimited. So they decided to pay more attention to other aspects of world security or their own security. But I don't think it really matters whether there are 100,000 American soldiers in Poland, 50,000, or even 10,000, which I think is a huge tripwire, as you described it.
Mm-hmm. But I think, Professor, that's exactly, though, the fear here of what we're given. I know you said this is not a complete exodus of U.S. troops, but I believe it was even yesterday in Brussels that NATO Secretary for Europe has said exactly that he expects a gradual reduction of U.S. troops, that there might be more, not all of them, but that would maybe be part of something that can continue. I'm curious about what you've said, that it's not essential to U.S. national national security to have troops potentially here in the eastern flank, here in Europe. But then what we've seen, though, from Russia that continues its aggressive war in Ukraine, all those actions we've been following for years now. So you think that's no longer a threat to the United States or to Europe?
Well, let me put it very cynically. As long as the war in Ukraine goes on, as long as Ukraine is capable of defending itself, and we have every reason to believe that Ukraine is fully capable of defending itself. As long as that happens, there is no real threat of Russia's invading Poland. I think our politicians, meaning Polish politicians, are not doing their job properly. They are not feeding good information to the people of Poland. They give confusing opinions. I think it is very immature on our side, the way we as politicians comment on what Washington wants to do. Mm-hmm. I think if our government behaved more reasonably, more maturely, we would have, nobody in Poland would have been upset about the change of the American troop size in Poland.
But that's the thing, Professor. Though you're saying that the government in Poland, politicians have to, they are acting maturely in the sense that this has united both parties. This security arrangement, this alliance between the United States, the model ally that's been called by the United States, reassurances from President Trump, Poland also buying, at the end of the day, a lot of American equipment. So I think it's a different story if we look at Germany, but for Poland, I think that's why it's been so surprising. One quick thing as well, you said Ukraine is capable of defending itself. I think even with the casualties we see and the attacks we see every day, I think the facts could tell a different story. And just really briefly at the end, I want to ask you, what about European allies? Is there now a time, and Vice President Vance has said this himself, about capabilities building up in Europe? So are we now supposed to rely on Germany, on France, on Italy, on the Baltic states? Is that the new NATO for Poland and Europe?
Definitely not on any of these countries by itself. But if you talk about the European military arrangement, there have been a lot of talk about it for the last, 10, 15, 20 years. Lots of talks and no action. And I think now Europeans, Western Europeans, if you want to use the phrase, are beginning to realize they cannot depend on the United States forever. And we Europeans are beginning to get our act together. Unfortunately, this will take 20, maybe 30 years, obviously enough, to be ready, because creating a European force is a very complex undertaking. There are language problems, there are communication problems, there are military culture problems, and so on and so on. But we have to start at some point. And I think Trump and Washington is giving us a very much needed shock. And shock treatments are not nice in psychology or in politics, but sometimes they are absolutely necessary to make the person or the country involved finally move rather than talk and talk and talk.
All right, so shock therapy, as you said there, but there's still much to discuss and analyze. But look, thanks for giving us the latest in your opinion on all this. That was our guest, Professor Zbigniew Lewicki, American Studies expert. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching. That concludes World Talks, but stay right here on TVP World for more. Goodbye.